Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, directed by J.A. Bayona, is the sequel to the 2015 film Jurassic World, and this time the remaining dinosaurs are living on a remote island where they're set to be wiped out unless humans intervene. Claire and Owen, played by Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt respectively, are recruited for a rescue mission, but before long this mission turns into something else entirely. As the dinosaurs face extinction once again, Claire and Owen try to intervene. Alright, so let me just be totally real and lay everything on the table right from the get-go. I don't think I'm as big a fan of the old Jurassic movies as most people seem to be. I watched them a ton with my family when I was a young kid, and I always enjoyed watching them. They kind of scared me a little bit, to be honest, but I enjoyed them. But they didn't define my childhood like they did for a lot of others. And it's been a while since I have seen those old films, but I do remember liking them all. I did enjoy them. It's not like I hate them. I still enjoyed them. I just don't love them as much as everyone else. And I'm not just in love with the franchise like a lot of people are. So when this new rebooted Jurassic franchise started in 2015, I wasn't overwhelmed with joy or anything because I'm mildly connected to the franchise at best. Despite all that, the first film was about what I expected it to be, a very average summer box office film that wasn't all that great, but wasn't all that terrible either. This second film, though, it's just bad. Almost everything that Fallen Kingdom sets out to do, aside from a few things that I will touch on in this video, it fails at. It's not nearly as funny as it wants to be, it's not very exciting or emotional either, and its characters are just so poorly developed and bland that they just don't work. And it's actually kind of sad because I am a huge fan of Chris Pratt and I actually like Bryce Dallas Howard quite a bit too, but it's almost out of their hands here. The script is just so ineffective at what it sets out to do that it really doesn't matter how good the actors are in it, it's just not gonna work. If the recipe sucks, it doesn't really matter how good the chef is. It's not going to taste good. The dialogue is just really bad, and it's funny because a lot of the critics out there use the word generic to describe these summer blockbuster films, but this time that label actually sticks. It's kind of overused a lot in terms of film criticism, but this time it actually makes sense and works. This movie feels like it was made in a room full of studio execs that were running down a checklist of everything a summer blockbuster needs. The problem is that it all feels so manufactured and disingenuous that nothing works as effectively as it's intended to or probably should. I don't think many people go into a Jurassic movie expecting amazing characters and super rich backstories, but they do expect a competent plot that at least moves the story along as you get to the dinosaurs and fun stuff. The problem is that nothing about this story narratively really works. It's just bad. There's hardly any emotion, the story has no true direction, and it just feels like this big general plot idea, but no true focus. To its credit, there's actually two things that work in Fallen Kingdom. One is a minor plot detail in Owen's connection to Blue, the raptor that he basically raised from birth, and the other is an escape scene that you saw in the trailer when the volcano explodes on the island. These are really the only two things that this film has going for it, besides the fact that Chris Pratt is in this movie and Bryce Dallas Howard is too. Star power can only get you so far though, and we've all seen that many times before. Your story has to be good enough to actually stand on its own, and it just doesn't here. There are some tender moments with Owen and Blue that work well, like I mentioned, and these are the moments where I actually felt some sort of investment in what was going on. I felt their connection, I felt the weight of Owen's choices, and how they affected Blue and the other dinosaurs as well. Sadly, these type of moments are pretty few and far between, as the film often goes for cheap laughs and big exciting thrills that just don't work. Let's talk about the humor for a second, because blockbuster films in the summertime generally try to offer a well-balanced approach, something that could suit a wide array of audiences and of course be family-friendly for box office reasons. That's all fine, I think we can all live with that, but there are times where this method can be too predictable, and this is one of those cases. This brand of humor feels a lot like what Baywatch tried to do last year. It's clearly going for a specific style of comedy, and it's not trying to reinvent the wheel or anything, but it's just not well written enough to even pull off a predictable comedic approach. This is due to both poor writing, like I mentioned several times already, and poor delivery also. But this is just really resulting in an unbalanced brand of comedy that resulted in a lot of empty silence with little to no laughter in my theater. I mean, laughs were pretty few and far between despite the consistent effort to try to get them. I keep harking back to the writing, but all around this script just fails. This movie has no flow to it. I didn't feel any anticipation for anything that was happening on screen. And most importantly, the inevitable showdown between the corrupt baddies and our ragtag heroes just doesn't feel all that interesting. Speaking of that, this conflict feels very familiar yet very underwhelming in that it has some mean, greedy baddies who want to exploit the dinosaurs for their own schemes, which is something we've seen way too much from these films. I just felt like this movie was incredibly safe and predictable. There's maybe one or two surprises, if that, in the entire film. But all the major stuff is about as straightforward as you can get. Again, this just feels like your generic summer action film that doesn't offer anything new, and more importantly, doesn't even execute the familiar all that well. I will say that the movie improves as it goes. It gets better and does slightly pick things up, but only slightly. There is fun to be had here. The problem is that I have a really difficult time recommending you go out and see this movie because it's just not good enough and well-rounded enough to warrant you rushing out to go see it. This is definitely one of those films that you can wait to watch down the line if you're invested in the Jurassic franchise in any way. I was actually surprised with how many people showed up to the theater to see this movie. Just how packed it was actually really surprising to me. And I kind of underestimated the popularity of the franchise in 2018. It's just a very crowded box office this summer, and I figured Jurassic World would suffer from that. It looks like it won't though. There's one last thing I want to mention here, and I've kind of been pushing it off because I always feel bad ragging on an actor's performance. But there's a character named Franklin played by Justice Smith, and he's like an IT guy who does all the computer stuff, and he's the designated comedy relief. I'm sorry, but this character just flops incredibly hard. I mean, I appreciate what he was trying to do, but it just doesn't work ever. I mean, he's basically just there to be goofy and to laugh at, and his character is easily one of the worst parts of the film. Every time he cracks a joke, it was just crickets in the theater, to the point where it gets kind of awkward and sort of uncomfortable for the viewer, and you start to feel bad. It's rough stuff. As we wrap up, let's take a look at the pros-cons list. As for the pros, I thought there were some fun action moments and a couple heartfelt scenes, but that's it for the pros, honestly. As for the cons, I thought the film was poorly written, the comedy was very poor, the pacing is a mess, and the characters are just bad. Overall, I'm going to give Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom a 4.5 out of 10, and definitely recommend you pass on this one in theaters unless you are a die-hard Jurassic Park fan. Even then, I'd recommend you save your money and just wait. You'll thank me in the end. Well, hopefully. So did you guys see Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom yet? Did you like it more than I did? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, let me know your most anticipated film for the rest of the summer. For me, it's obviously Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'm just looking forward to seeing how Marvel follows up Infinity War and kind of ties it all together. Either way, this is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next video.